Welcome, everyone, again to the show. Well, here's what I did. As you can probably see from the channel, I changed the branding of it from the Chuck Graham Show to Libpanic. Well, kind of wanted to illustrate what the show's all about. You know, the Chuck Graham Show, I mean, there's so many people's shows out there, and that's fine. I just didn't, I don't know. I wanted to kind of address mainly what we talk about on here is politics or whatever, and how the liberals just panicked on every aspect, especially with dealing with Donald Trump. But there's a couple of things I want to get into this morning. It is 1 o'clock in the morning. I woke up, had some coffee. I guess I'll start my day. Have a little bit of insomnia sometimes. So, without further ado, let's get into a couple of things. One, the channel is going to be solely focused on exposing the nonsense of liberals and the left. So, and here's the thing. They're in just an uproar panic. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but the lady got, what was her name? She got like $86 million. Well, that's going to be appealed. She's never going to get that money. And I watched her on MSNBC talking to one of the hosts, Anderson Cooper, and that woman's crazy. I mean, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. Her elevator don't go all the way to the top. Talking about, anyway, I'm not even going to get into that. But also, I want to address some other things that I've heard. I've heard Tucker say it. I've heard a bunch of other people talk about this. Now, what they were talking about the Supreme Court ruling on the Texas border. If I'm not mistaken, if I read this correctly or researched it correctly, the Supreme Court didn't rule against Texas on. They just lifted the injunction that allowed the federal government to cut the razor wire. Okay, I think there was a temporary injunction, and they allowed that to happen until the lower courts make a decision, if I'm understanding this correctly. So, before everybody starts wigging out that the Supreme Court has lost its mind, I don't think so. I think what's happened is they lifted the injunction. It still hadn't got to the Supreme Court to whether or not what Texas is doing or whether what the Biden administration is doing is constitutional or not. So I think there's a lot of moving parts in that people are misinterpreting. So again, before people start wigging out, I don't think that that's an issue with whether or not the Supreme Court's going to rule one way or the other on it. I think Texas has the right to secure its borders if the Biden administration's not doing it. But I think you've got a lot of rhetoric that's going on, and frankly, folks, if we don't get this guy out of office, we're not going to have a country. If we don't vote him out, we're not going to have a country. That is if they don't steal it. So, and they've done that for years. Lyndon B. Johnson, you can go back and research him. I'm not even going to get into that. He was known for his close calls, so to speak, that turned out to be not a close call. And folks, I'll address something on the political side of this. We had an election here locally where the guy lost by, it was 7 votes, and then it turned out to be like 14. He'd been in office quite a while. So if you ever think your vote doesn't matter, well, you'd be mistaken, because it does. And generally speaking, the one that spends the most money wins the election. That's just general rule of it. And that's just because you got a better plan, you got a better advertisement, you've got all the resources you need to get your message out there, and you're constantly in people's faces. So the point being is this: generally, the one that spends the most money wins the election. But if you think your vote doesn't matter, it does matter, because some of these elections I've seen them get really, really close, especially locally. And you should be concerned about every local election. And me, I'm voting for Donald Trump. The more they go after him, the more I'm gonna vote for him. And I've said that from the beginning. I think that all this J6 nonsense is just nonsense. I think they went after his political rivals. I think they weaponized the federal government. And I think if they're not careful with all these states coming together, we could very well end up in a civil war. So, and I've often said it won't be citizens rising up with their weapons and firearms. It'll be the states descending from the Union again. Now, it's in our Mississippi Constitution that we won't do that. And just to give you a little bit of educational background, all these damn statutes and stuff they were taking down and all these names of these military bases, what people don't realize is that was in the treaties with the Confederacy, that it would be a smooth transition, because we were, at the end of the day, all Americans. So they wanted a smooth transition, and they wanted that to not feel like you were still a foreigner as you integrated back into the Union back in the 1800s. And that was part of the treaties that were agreed upon, of the names of those bases and stuff, and the heritage of the South and the Confederacy and that sort of thing. I think we're way beyond flags and this and that. And there's a lot of symbols that's been manipulated over the years. If I'm not mistaken, the swastika was actually a symbol of peace until Hitler took a hold of it. And then it changed the whole definition of that. And you still got idiots that don't believe that the Holocaust actually existed. And I don't understand, folks, what the hell is going on with these people that are protesting and supporting Hamas. I don't get that at all. So, and it's just idiocy. It's just people that don't know. They don't have enough critical thinking skills today, and the Gen Zs and all the blue-haired folks running around that's getting their college education. I mean, they just don't have the critical thinking skills to be able to get out of the rain, and they just don't think about it. It's like capitalism. Capitalism is the greatest thing that's ever happened to humanity to pull people out of poverty. And the reason I say that is you have your goods and services that you want to give to someone, and they're willing to pay for it, right? Anybody can succeed in a capitalist society. It's hard. I won't lie to you. It's hard. I've built businesses before, and they're hard. It's hard to do. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to stay afloat. There's nothing easy about it, but it does pull people out of poverty, and you get paid for the work that you do. You get paid for your labor. So that's the thing. We've gotten so skewed in America today that we think that this social utopia, it doesn't work. It never has. And I had somebody ask, what's the difference in socialism and democratic socialism? Well, I'll tell you the difference. It's very simple. Socialism takes all your shit, as the government does, and uses it. Well, democratic socialism, the new thing that they're talking about now, well, it doesn't take all your shit. It just taxes you to death. And so it takes your shit through taxation. So you still own your stuff. You're just taxed to death. Just all the proceeds of that stuff goes into taxes. I don't know what Brainiac put in our Constitution that the IRS had the right to take to tax us without putting a cap on it. I have no idea, but they have. I mean, they have unfeathered, taxation on you. And folks, the bottom line is this: we send billions of dollars overseas. Like Ukraine. It's time for them to either surrender or get out, because, I mean, we've sent enough damn money over there. Ain't no sense in sending any more money to them people because we can't even give an account to it. What if you looked at your checking account and you were $34 trillion in the red? Do you think Walmart would take your check? No. But that's where we're at, $34 trillion. That's at the last time I looked at the clock, or at the debt ceiling, or at the debt clock, sorry. Yeah, $34 trillion. There's no end to this. And at some point, the dollar is going to be absolutely worthless, and we're not going to have an economy. There's going to have to be a reset somewhere. So that's all I'm saying. So on my rant tonight at 1 o'clock in the morning, I just decided that, I was going to address some of these things. Did the Supreme Court screw it up? Not really. I mean, they lifted the injunction, but that shit happens all the time. And you never get a straight answer out of them. I mean, they always leave wiggle room. That's why attorneys and laws and all that shit makes so much money to people. That's why people go into Congress, poor, and they come out rich. It's because it's just a big circle jerk, so to speak. I mean, bad analogy, but the fact of the matter is this: it's just a revolving door. You make a law, you pass the law goes before some court challenges the law, then it makes its way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court either finds it constitutional or not. There's my cat. But finds it constitutional or not, right? And either way it goes. If the left or the right or the middle, and I'm more of an independent than I am a Republican. I think the Republicans are absolutely fucking worthless. So here's the thing. You got the left, you got the right. Either one of those sides win at the Supreme Court. It's either constitutional or it's not constitutional, or on its face, or they pick apart the statute itself. Much like McDonald versus City of Chicago, when you have the right to use your firearm, even in the city. Well, what they'll do is they'll come up with some other means they'll change the law, is my point. One side wins in court, right? Well, all they do is they go back, they change the law, and then all this shit starts all over again because they've changed the law. So what was case law on this particular statute ends up getting passed again, and they tweak it. And then once they tweak it, I'll give you an example. It's a really small example, but we had a statute in Mississippi that said that a highway patrol cannot operate radar in a municipality over 15,000 people. And the reason for that is they wanted their troopers out in rural areas because the other areas are already covered by city police and all that. That's the thinking behind that. What did they do? Well, they repealed it. They didn't repeal it. They tweaked it and took that section out of it. So now, you can have. The worst thing in the world is when you see like sheriff's officers and state troopers all congregating inside a town somewhere. That leaves a whole bunch of area that's not being covered by law enforcement and patrols and that sort of thing. But that's what happens. You have all these laws, you have all this cycle, and it's just a revolving door. And then you'll have the Supreme Court make a decision, and they won't be clear on it. They'll leave wiggle room for anything. That's why you can argue shit 2 or 3 different ways. It's easy to argue something. It's easy to figure out what your other opponent's going to argue. All you got to do is figure out how would you try to get the person out of it. And generally, you can. That's why I can't stand the YouTube algorithm and all this censorship. It's because you have dissenting opinions. And one side is going to be right, but I don't care who it is. And sometimes you can be right either way. And that's the truth. Sometimes you can be right on either one of the arguments. It just depends on how it's written. I'll give you an example. We had a case one time that there was bank fraud, right? Person backdated documents, signed off on one of the clerks signed off on an affidavit saying, yeah, that's what happened. Made it look like one of the garnishments that we'd filed actually was served after they had given him the money. And it was clearly bank fraud. But we got this brainiac idiot judge up in Lowndes County. And, well, what happened was she dismissed it. Now, one judge said it was plain case fraud, but he had to recuse himself. This judge dismissed it. Now, she would have been, it's pretty much right either way. The reason is because there's a statute with a statutory remedy to cure that issue when there's a challenge to the answer. There's a statute and there's a remedy to it, right? But it's both. It's bank fraud and there's a statutory remedy. So you'd be right either way. But it was just idiotic and, whatever. So, but the bottom line is you have to understand that our system it's the best system, I believe, in the world, but it needs some tweaking. And if we don't do something with all these illegals coming in, how are we going to round them up? That's the question. How are we going to round all these folks up? Is Donald Trump, if he gets elected, which I suspect he will, what happens? Do we go out and round them up and put them on buses and send them back? Where do we send them to? And I can tell you the same thing that they did in the 60s when they tried to capture the black vote after they couldn't stop them from voting, the Democrats. And this Southern switch that they talk about is just really nonsense. It was more on economics than it was anything else. Your real racism in America came after the Civil War during Jim Crow era, and that's what I'm talking about with the Democrats. And then the Republicans started having a better economic plan for your wealthy people, and that's why there was a switch. It wasn't a switch because of racism or any of that. But the point being is, I'll give you an example. Teresa Matora, and I think I'm pronouncing her name, Teresa Marie Matora. She was the richest black woman in Louisiana. Well, she was the richest woman in Louisiana in 1830 to 1850, I believe. She was black. She owned a bunch of black slaves. So that's my point. The point is, but they don't teach you that in history. And so how was she able to succeed? Guess the honor system. Go figure. I don't know. I wasn't in the 1830s. There's no way for me to know. You can only go by what is in our written history, which they try to suppress at every juncture if they can. But you did have, once they couldn't keep black people from voting, they started trying to get the vote. And that's what they're doing with these migrants. They're hoping, and I think it's going to backfire because a lot of these migrants are Catholic and conservative, and well, they're cartels and terrorists too. I mean, they're in the mix of all that. But the point being is what if it backfires? What if they're conservative? Well, they'll come up with some other reason. I mean, used to they wanted to shut the border. Used to they wanted to secure elections. They wanted to make sure that the machines were working properly. They wanted to make sure, no, it's just a big switch. But I will give the Democrats credit. Now, I've been railing on the Democrats here for about, 4 minutes. But I'll give them credit. At least they have the guts to impeach some damn body. The Republicans have been doing nothing but investigating. It's like Wicker, which is our congressman, fucking worthless. I mean, investigate. That's all they do. That's it. They don't never do shit with the information that they get. Nothing. Have they impeached Joe Biden? No. And they're not. I'm telling you right now, they're not going to do it. At least the Democrats, even if they don't have the information, even if they've made the shit up, at least they have the balls to do something with it. That's why I'm independent. I'm going to most likely take the R away from my damn name in my voter registration because I'm sick of them. I mean, the Republicans, all they do is jip. That's it. All they do is talk. They don't do shit. Not nothing when it comes to representing. We don't have leaders in this country, folks. We are not a democracy. We're not even a represented democracy. We are a constitutional republic. If you don't believe me, where in any of the papers, Federalist, any of our Constitution, any of the amendments, where does it say, even the national anthem, where does it say democracy? It doesn't. because we're not a democracy. A democracy is when the masses control everything. We're not a representative democracy. We're a constitutional republic. Unless, of course, I'm wrong and they change the definition of fucking democracy. And that could happen 5 minutes ago. Hell, you can't never tell in this country anymore, or this world anymore, when they're just going to change the damn definition. Like, what's a vaccine? It doesn't have to immunize you now. It just can maybe work. But folks, what I'm trying to say is this. We've got a lot of issues in this country, and they need to be addressed. So I'm going to stop my rambling at this point. I digress. Kind of lost my train of thought anyway. But anyway, if you like this video and you like the content, the nonsense that I jabber about on the Libpanic, if you like the name, let me know if you like the name and the change and all that, because, I don't make any damn money off this shit, but I enjoy doing it. And when I can't sleep, I guess this is what I'm going to start doing. So in the meantime, I will catch you guys on the next video. God bless you, and stay safe. And go vote. It matters.